How did Adidas mess up a ball this bad?
So before a company starts releasing a product to the public, they'll make prototypes to test out and make changes. And this is really interesting to me as it shows what a company was thinking when making a product. And in the case of today's video, where they went wrong.
These football boots are literally unwearable.
I've managed to get my hands on some very rare prototypes for this video, including a prototype of one of the most famous and controversial footballs of all time.
And I'm guessing that Adidas wouldn't want anyone testing out this ball.
But first I'm going to be testing a prototype football boot.
So at first glance these may look just like a normal pair of black football boots, but if you get a closer look you'll actually see they heavily resemble the Adidas Predator 3. So these boots are the prototype of the Adidas Predator, and I'm going to test these boots out and see which changes I would have made for the final product. So when creating a new football product, companies won't just suddenly start making thousands of the boot without knowing what they're like, so they make prototypes to test them until they're happy with it and they've got a final product that they can sell. So these blackout boots that I'm wearing now would have been used by pros to give feedback wearing training and say what they like and don't like about the boot to help improve it, but I've had one shot in these and they are so uncomfortable. Right, so I'm going to treat these as if I'm testing them out and giving some feedback to Adidas, so yeah, let's see what changes I'd make.
So it was no longer than 5 minutes wearing these boots that I just had to take them off. Honestly, the most uncomfortable boots I've ever worn.
I can already see why it's a smart idea to make prototypes, because honestly I just can't play in these. They're giving me foot cramp, they just feel so weird on my feet. If I was feeding back to Adidas, I would just tell them these are basically unwearable for me. Now in this package here is an example of a prototype that in my opinion is better than the finished product. So the kit that I've got on right now is the prototype of the 2016-2017 AC Milan home shirt, and this was the final product they went with. And now if you ask me, I think this kit looks a lot cooler, a bit less traditional, but I really like it. Right, so now we're going to move on to the title of the video. Let me paint the picture. So I made a video testing out the rarest football products of all time, and people seem to enjoy it, so I wanted to make a part 2. One of my usual methods for trying to find rare products is going on eBay, setting the price range to highest first, and just seeing what crazy products pop up. And normally nothing does, but the other day I saw something that I'd never seen before. Now this might look just like a regular black and white football, but the price tag and the fact that it says ultra rare in the description suggested otherwise, so I read a bit further. This is a prototype of the Jabulani, stop right there, I'm sold. This football could hold the answers to literally so many questions. I need to test it out.
So I bought the ball and a week later it arrived at my house.
So I've got the package here, and very quickly for those who have no idea what the Jabulani is, if you've been living under a rock, basically one of the most infamous, controversial footballs of all time.
The Jabulani was hated by goalkeepers and players for its unpredictable movement through the air. Buffon claimed that the ball was inadequate and shameful, and one designer even said whoever's responsible for the Jabulani should be shot for crimes against football. Maybe a bit extreme that one, but as you can see it didn't go down too well. Anyway, let's get this box open.
There's going to be some crazy goals in this World Cup based on the ball.
So there is actually two footballs in here, the Jabulani and something else, but I'll get onto that a bit later. Where's the Jabulani? So here we have the prototype Jabulani football. I guess the only thing we can do is take this to the pitch and get some answers. By the looks of it, this is probably one of the most developed Jabulani prototypes. I'm sure the first drafts were far different to this.
For context, this prototype is a football that I have never seen before, and the reason it's so important is because this is the same ball that Adidas would have used to test extensively. So from me testing this ball, I'm able to find problems that Adidas missed, and there's a lot of questions to be answered.
Now you're probably wondering why an Adidas football that was only supposed to be tested in the lab has ended up in my hands. So I asked the seller of the ball how he got his hands on it. He basically said that years ago a friend of his had links to the Udinese Academy, and they had a summer camp with the Ajax Academy who brought these balls over from the Netherlands with them. I presume Adidas had gave them to him because they were spare. I didn't quite work that bit out. But either way, his mate got hold of the balls and then sold them to him years later. So there were actually a few of these Jabulani prototypes made, but there's very few that are actually in perfect condition and completely usable like this, because Adidas would have used them for things like compression tests, testing the flight of the ball, seeing how durable they are, seeing how they move through the air under different air pressures, and basically a lot of them would have just been destroyed from over testing them.
And this is an example that a seller also sent to me of a ball that had been tested to the point where it no longer holds air and has loads of different scuff marks on it.
So yeah, this is basically one of the only Jabulani prototypes with no imperfections whatsoever. There it is, perfectly round, ready to test out.
So I took the ball down to the pitch to test out, and these are the questions that I wanted to know the answers to by the end of the video.
Did they just ignore all the signs from the prototypes they tested? Or did they in fact know that the ball was weird and moved strange, but just made it anyway? We're about to find out. So I'm going to be putting the camera really far back and zooming in, so hopefully if there's any movement on the shots, you'll be able to see it.
So the plan was just take a load of shots with the prototype Jabulani and see how it moves through the air.
Whoa, there we go. Oh, there we go. Whoa. Whoa. Wow.
So from having a few shots on day one with this ball, it was definitely moving, but I wanted to make sure, and I wanted to test it properly, unlike Adidas. So the next day I headed back down to the pitch.
Whoa. 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 There we go.
Now day two was more of the same, and I was definitely getting a lot of movement on this ball, but there was one final thing that I needed to do. So I got on the train to meet my friend Cam, who asked to bring his Jabulani with him so we could do a direct side-by-side comparison of both of them.
So do you think they are exactly the same?
I think they're the exact same ball, yeah. But I mean, look at the panel design. It is the same.
And the grooves are all in the same places on both balls?
Yeah.
So just by looking at both of them, they seemed very similar, if not the exact same, suggesting that this ball was Adidas' final prototype of the Jabulani.
Right, so we're going to do some pings and see if one ball moves more than the other.
So from pinging both the Jabulanis for a bit, it was clear the prototype moved just the same as the final product.
Oh, yeah, I've messed up, haven't they?
So after a week of testing, this is what I had to say.
So from testing this ball, I guess the one thing that we do have an answer to is that it can't have been a mistake from Adidas. I don't see how they wouldn't have known that this ball moved weird. So that leaves the question, why? Why did Adidas not do anything about it, knowing that it moves strange? I guess we'll never know the answer. Well, maybe we will. Adidas, if you're watching this, please explain and tell us why.
So as I say, this leaves me very confused on how the ball managed to get through all the testing from Adidas. And this comment here is the only response I can find from Adidas about the ball. There are strict FIFA guidelines on the World Cup football, including size, weight and bounce. Not only does our ball fulfill all these conditions, it goes beyond them. I'll leave it up to you what you make of that, that's all I'll say.
So now that we've kind of cleared up everything to do with this Jabulani, I've got two more very interesting products to show you. So we also wanted to take a look at an older prototype, and these are the prototype of the R9 boots from 2000, and as you can see, these things are old school, just made in standard brown leather. As you can see on the prototype, the collar is actually a lot bigger than it was on the final product.
Here's a look at the prototype boots compared to the finished product. I think the main change to notice is definitely the size of the collar. From testing, Nike obviously decided that it was better to have it more streamlined.
So the final product I'm going to be looking at today is not a prototype, it's actually a concept boot. It's the Nike Air Zoom. So I did include these in my testing the rarest football products video, but because I was buying them from a mate, I couldn't actually test them myself. But they look so good, had to buy them myself. I'm going to see what they're like. So unlike the other products in this video, these aren't a prototype, but they're a concept boot, meaning they are the finished product, but Nike just haven't decided to mass release them. I'm not exactly sure why. We're going to try and find out why, because they do look pretty cool, so yeah. So you can see that these boots are super light and they are extremely thin on the upper. They're also made around this little air zoom thing here, which is padding and apparently conserves energy, but I'm not sure how much I believe all that. So yeah, also they've got fly wire. They've got basically every bit of tech you can think of in one football boot. Why Nike haven't decided to mass release them yet, I've got no idea. Let's test them out and try and find out why. Honestly, after testing these Air Zones for a bit, I have no idea why Nike don't just make these as their main boot. For me, they're the coolest looking boot Nike make at the minute, and also they feel great to play with. I don't know why they're just a concept boot. Nike, make these a real thing.